All right, team, welcome back to After Hours. It's going to be a fantastic show today. You're going to want to stick around into the end. There's going to be a lot of value in the show. We are discussing the Bitcoin versus Zcash debate that got popped off on Twitter last week, or X. And a lot of people are throwing their hats in the ring for this debate. And we're going to discuss it here today. What are we choosing, Bitcoin or Zcash? We're also going to be giving maybe a little bit of a crypto prediction. Is the Bitcoin bull run over? What about alt season? And then we'll get into some technical analysis at the end of this show. It's going to be a little bit more of a macro show. And it's going to be topics that we don't always talk about on this show. And I'm very excited for that. I hope you guys end up being excited for that, because we're going to be talking about Bitcoin a little bit more than we usually do today. And so if you guys do like that, I suggest make it known in the comment section, because every time, Matt, we bring up Bitcoin, everyone, kicks their feet up and doesn't show up to the show. And so we want to be talking about things that matter. And if you guys don't want to hear about Bitcoin, we just won't bring it up. But I'm going to push forward. Sometimes when we push forward, when we push back against you guys and say, no, you need to hear this, sometimes you guys respond well. Like, I never would have thought you guys would have been that interested in ZBCN or the HNT show that Matt did. I think it was 2 weeks ago, got a lot of love. So we're going to push forward here today. I do have to let you guys know, a lot of people are a little bit confused about what to do in crypto land right now. And you know what we're doing here. So Matt, can you tell the team what we are doing here? What's our goal here?
Yeah, guys, really just here on YouTube and, even on our short form content, it's really just to bring attention to the kind of analytics and work that we do full time. And we do offer it at a really good price to you guys. If you find us through YouTube, with code YouTube, you guys can get 50% off either membership plus a 30-day free trial. Gavin can probably flash a little piece of the website here, but we've got our daily shows that we do Monday through Friday, where we do analytics and look through the charts, stock market, everything else. We have some selected news we cover for you guys there. We have a lot of learning resources like our consistent investor strategy, our Discord community. There's just a ton of resources here that all come at $49 a month when you use code YouTube plus that 30-day free trial. So I encourage you guys to come check it out if you guys like the kind of content we're talking about here. The seriousness that we bring when it actually comes to investing and long-term investing, and not just here to make a quick buck. We're definitely the right program for you. So I'd use those 30 days and explore the resources and see if it's a good fit.
Let's get into this Bitcoin versus Zcash debate. The Bitcoin and Zcash debate intensifies. Individuals from both communities sparred over privacy, centralization, and market manipulation as Zcash continues to dominate the narrative. Let's go through what Cointelegraph had to say about this. The comments were, the Bitcoin only and everything else is a scam crowd is going to get really twisted trying to figure out what to say about Zcash. The CEO of investment firm Bitwise, Hunter Horsley, said in an X post, which ignited a firestorm of responses because Zcash and Bitcoin are so similar. We got another comment here. No, we're pretty comfortable calling this obviously coordinated pump and dump of a VC coin a scam. BitPain said in a response referencing Zcash 1,500% rally since October. So Matt, I kind of want to let you go with this first, kind of give some commentary on this. Are you team Bitcoin? Are you team Zcash? Where do you kind of line up in this debate?
I'm team making some money. And at the end of the day, we are investors here. I'm a person who cares deeply about the tech, and we talk a lot about the tech, and, it is important to have diversification in different verticals. Throughout crypto, as time has gone on, we've had a tremendous amount of volume come on, both in different types of problems and verticals people are attacking, as well as just, the difference of just layer one tokens and other tokens that are being built on those layer ones. There's going to be some time where we kind of sift through that and see what's actually long-standing. But in the whole Zcash Bitcoin situation, it just really makes me extremely confused every time I see these types of fights break out, when it's a rally is involved and it becomes a hate rally because everyone counted it out for so long, or there's been a fundamental change when we saw a lot of discussion around XRP and the strategic reserve, and people getting upset that it wasn't just this Bitcoin only, and then everyone starts to go down the rabbit hole about Ripple and all this stuff. People really just seem to kind of pull out all the stops when something that they don't own does really well, and it's something that they generally talk really poorly about or discounted, because they're trying to cope with that. And it's really just disappointing that people can't see that multi-chain future. And I think that more than anything, if you're, maybe upset and there's maybe a renewed interest in certain projects like this, maybe we should push to, integrate some of those things on a Bitcoin network, like the OpCat proposal that's been out there for bringing a privacy layer to Bitcoin. So maybe some of this starts to, spark that conversation and push forward. And, we're also seeing a pretty big surgence in just a push towards zero knowledge proofs, ZK rollups on other chains as well. So we're starting to see kind of this privacy layer become a little bit more necessary. And now when you get a huge rally like this and people start to associate a dollar amount with privacy, you start to get these weird debates, especially given, Bitcoin's performance compared to Zcash's, at least as of recent here. So, price-wise, would I get into either of them at this very moment? Probably not. But overall, I think that Zcash is probably a higher utility coin, considering it still takes a long time to move. It's still proof of work, scarcity, but you do get that privacy model to it. So I think that on a programmable level, Zcash offers more natively at the protocol level.
Yeah, I think there's this dialectical tension within the crypto sphere, and it's the maxi mentality and the multi-chain proponents, whereas like a Bitcoin maxi believes that Bitcoin is the only digital asset worth buying or using, whereas the multi-chain proponents have that same idea but just about their networks. And I think it can be a little bit more nuanced than that. And I think the question that you need to answer for yourself is, what do you believe you're buying? What are these cryptos? Because that will determine how you kind of proceed in crypto. And so, I think the conversation kind of gets, people enter crypto for different reasons. And I think people kind of forget that. And so for me, fiat has failed me. I think the Federal Reserve System has failed. And I think there must be another option out there when we are discussing where to put your money. And so is Bitcoin the best option for that? You have the proof of work protocol, you have the consensus, the computable network that secures it. You have the ability to custody, the adoptions off the charts. And so you have all of these that make Bitcoin, in my mind, a safe option, a safe alternative to USD. And I know most boomers won't think that way, or most older people find safe haven within their institutions. But as a young person, when you understand what you are buying, it does feel a lot safer. And this is, I'm just going to say this early on, this is where you get someone like me that can hold both Bitcoin and Zcash. And so on the flip side of that, I'm also an investor. I also want to maximize my funds. And as we discuss on the show all the time, Matt, a lot of these networks are providing real value today. Ondo with tokenization, XRP being the payment layer of Ripple payments, and now soon to be the settlement of card transactions with Gemini. You have Ethereum, the most mature, the most used L1 out there for decentralized finance, that hosts some of your protocols that you take for granted of, Aave, Uniswap, Curve. And so we have this utility over here. And so that's where I think the dialectical tension gets misconstrued here, is because you have different utility across the board here. And for some people, the base case store of value utility outside of the Federal Reserve is the one they want to attack the most. They want to speak about that the most. And, over time, I'm 24 years old. And so I've gotten to hear this more and more and more. And I do like the argument for it, Matt, because what are we selling our altcoins into? Are we selling them into USD so we can have a bunch of USD? Well, I thought the thought process here was that our value, the dollar is devalued over time. So that's not obviously a good store of value. And so we must have an alternative here, all right? What is it if we sell our altcoins into USD? Well, we're a part of the other people out there in society that don't even realize that they're suffering from inflation. The people that watch the show do know that. And so why would we participate with those people that are, ignorant and that don't know? And so this is where, I can kind of take both of these perspectives over here, and not to make this like super long or whatever, just because, I thought this topic would be super interesting. But, I think the loss of translation occurs with people. And I just kind of want to explain my position here, Matt, and then I kind of want you to explain your position, because I think people get, they watch our show and we talk about these altcoins all the time and the real value that's happening on the network. And we don't talk about Bitcoin a lot. And I kind of want to lay it down for the team here today. so that it's, pretty crystal clear. And I want to make my position unequivocally clear. I believe Bitcoin is the most suitable store of value. It is also the most ethical form of money. If you recognize that the Fed system is based on, really just trying to keep up with their monetary tools to keep their inflation at a 2% target over time, that is culminating in your dollar being devalued. And I do not think that is a worthy system to accept. And so this is why we ought to accept Bitcoin, because the ethics of Bitcoin are a suitable ethical system as opposed to the Fed. And so this is the system we're currently under right now. And I know this might seem like, a crazy thing to depart from a institutional system, where you get your dollars from your employer and you hold those dollars in a bank, and to say, oh, take those monies now and move that into a wallet where you store your digital assets might sound like a big stretch for you. But I got to tell you, Matt, there's been a change of money, how money has operated within our society over time. And just to stop at, Keynesian economics and with, the Federal Reserve manipulating our dollars, I don't think that's the final stop. I think decentralization does provide something valuable in 2025, where you have a global network of 18,500 nodes that is secure, that no government can take over, that you can have a money that's not going to be attacked or censored if you do or say the wrong thing. And so this is where I depart as a young person from fiat money, and I am accepting Bitcoin as a form of money. I've talked about this before. I know I've kind of rolled it out in the past, but I will be cash poor and crypto rich, next bear market, or I'm pretty much am now, but I will be DCAing into Bitcoin out of, the current cash I have into the bear market to establish a good position. I do recognize that Bitcoin is here for the long run. Nothing has shown me so far that Bitcoin is unreliable. People want to bring up 51% attack, or people want to bring up quantum computing. None of that is justified. That is all speculation. And so the point here is, Bitcoin is a suitable money alternative. Altcoins provide some of the best ROI across the board in the globe. XRP, HBAR, Zcash, the best ROI you can get around. And so who cares if it is affected with the rest of risk on right now? It is a crazy return, as you guys known as we've gone through our Zcash take profits recently. And so I think this is the case where I can hold both Bitcoin and Zcash and not have to choose one side of the debate. Matt, what is your current position? So I kind of laid out my position there, and I know that might have been a little bit overboard, but what's your current position on these matters?
Of course, I consider digital assets to be more valuable than just dollars in, a lot of capacities, primarily because of, the way that we can take custody of these assets, even if we're talking about stable coins, which are still pegged to dollars, and you can have stable coins that are pegged to other currencies as well. But, even now with, you mentioned Ondo earlier, you have the ability to hold tokens that directly represent short-term treasury yields. And then of course the ability to custody that, collateralize that, transfer that, in addition to wallets that are not centralized or, issued by a central authority. Like, that is very attractive to me as just even a person from my core values, as a libertarian. I'm very anti a large government, want to keep as many of my monies as possible, like to have privacy and then be able to have control over my assets. So, very end of the day, yes, Bitcoin over long periods of time is a store of value. But I think a lot of people misunderstand what that means, and they think if something's a store of value, well, that means I'm always 100% short-term mitigating all inflation and risk. And that's not the case. Your goal is to look over at inflation over long periods of time and hope that you create a good long-term plan to help mitigate that risk over years, not over, a short period of months. So people will get upset when they see volatility in Bitcoin or really any other digital asset out there. And it's not, indicative of the quality of the tech or any of those things a lot of the time. Really, it's just, again, risk on markets moving the way that they're going to move. But I just think there's a huge disconnect for people who even just don't understand, Bitcoin on just like a very basic fundamental level. And you're never going to convince people to buy altcoins if they don't understand the basics of Bitcoin. It's a very difficult thing to convince people of. So I think at the end of the day, it's going to still require more education. I think that there's just going to be a lot of people still within 5 to 10 years that never buy crypto because it just really just seems like this weird, risk on environment that just is way too volatile for them. But it's coming, and it's already going to be an effective part of our lives, whether we want it to be here or not. So, how we choose to adopt that early on, how we choose to maybe even, identify some of those trends before they become normal and there's, less of an ROI. There's definitely value to be had in Bitcoin, especially if you're, tactical about where you pick it up. You can, mitigate some good long-term risk and mitigate a lot of long-term inflation by doing long-term trading. But again, it's not to be treated so much as like I put it in my savings account because I'm using this to offset my emergency fund or offset, repairs to my car or whatever it is. It needs to still be a different cohort of money that has that long-term ability to either be added to or to weather through multiple volatilities. But yeah, I agree that overall I would rather own all Bitcoin than, no digital assets at all.
I love that, Matt. Yeah, I love that. Love that analysis there. Let's get into some of the things we have to talk about with Bitcoin. Bitcoin's at 91,000. And if you watched last week's show, we kind of laid out the case for this key area of interest we were sitting at, both used as support and former resistance. And what happened this last week, guys, we broke beneath that level. And so now, as of yesterday, we were at like 93,000 into this morning, and now we're at $91,000 on Bitcoin price. And so I kind of want to discuss, is this the start of the bear market? Are we just nearing a local bottom? And I kind of wanted to show some charts I was going through this weekend as some key indicators to maybe some of these questions. And so I wanted to start with this chart right here. This is the net realized profit loss metric. This metric represents the net magnitude of profit or loss realized by coins. And so this actually flipped to net losses. So you can see right here this third time, but previously it has been a key indicator of localized bottoms on the move up here. And it's hard to differ between, is this the start of the bear market or is this a local bottom? But we can see that this would be the start of potentially a local bottom. I did want to move to this next chart right here, move through this quick and swiftly. This is actually short-term holder supply in profit or loss ratio. This metric represents the ratio of short-term holder supply in profit to short-term holder supply in loss. And this is actually an ARK Invest indicator to see the local bottoms in a bull run and the tops in a bear market. So the inverse. And so right now, short-term holder supply is sitting at a loss, levels lower than the last two bear market bottoms. And this just goes to show you that short-term holders are in deep negative right now because they bought the peak of top of Bitcoin. And it kind of displays the best time for buying and marking a local bottom. And the last thing I kind of want to discuss here is kind of this, first off, the negative outlook for Bitcoin. Matt's going to get into it on the chart here. I hope he can show this for you guys. But when, just mapping a trend line on Bitcoin, it has kept a consistent higher high and higher low, but it recently broke beneath that this past weekend with, if you pull up this trend line that I show up here, it has 6 touch points on it, and kind of breaking it below it is not that great for a macro uptrend. I know, maybe my artistic ability isn't as good as Matt's, but hopefully, Matt, you can get into the chart there, because if this is true, what would we need to see confirmation of that? Back test the trend line and then keep continuing lower. That would be the start of moves lower into potentially a bear market. So what we're in our minds, it's like, we're establishing support for continuation higher, but the opposing view can be true. And so what does that mean? Well, we don't know yet. We have to see what happens here. The last thing I wanted to say was about Bitcoin dominance, because it looks technically cooked. It has a bearish flag on a weekly chart. It's in a downtrend. And so we have all of this that's culminating here. And then where we care about as altcoin holders is with Bitcoin dominance, because in previous market cycles, you see a flush of 40% in Bitcoin dominance. You see this money roll into altcoins, and you see altcoins go crazy. This is the altcoin season. And so this is maybe the positive outlook, where this could be the start of, some relief in the altcoin market. But, macro here, it doesn't look ultimately we're seeing some weakness right now, I guess you could say, Matt. And so I kind of wanted to give this a little quick lead in into your TA segment. What are you seeing? Is the Bitcoin bull run over? Is altcoin season canceled? That might actually sneak into the title today. And should we be worried? What should we be doing with our investments?
Yeah, so we'll take a look at a couple charts here. Again, guys, we of course are long-term macro bulls on crypto as a whole. Very picky about the alts that we do get into.
Isn't that funny how you have to say that, Matt?
Literally have to start with that because unfortunately everyone will come with their pitchforks and assume that you're suddenly bearish and you sold all of your shit and you hate this technology and I don't know, you're going to do something else. So I always have to preface it that way. And when we're looking at long-term uptrends, the uptrends are comprised of higher highs and higher lows. There's 4 components to any long-term uptrend. It's going to be the markup period. It's going to be the distribution period, markdown, reaccumulation, and then start back over again. That's what a macro uptrend is comprised of. And we can look at this from a multitude of different time frames, and there's always a different way that you guys can look at that analysis. It has been a relatively steep uptrend for Bitcoin when you kind of look at this left to right from 2022 forward. We've definitely taken more stops along the way, right? If we're not going to count the actual, what I would consider this be the bottom of the market in 2019, breakout back test, then you see the actual run kickoff in here. This run that occurred here in 2021, so different than this run in here. And I'm honestly glad that we've broken this picture perfect trend structure that people are so used to. One of the things we were watching for short term though is we saw, all right guys, this is the last top that was built in here. We had this top in here. We started to see some bounces off of it. Once we saw that level break in here, and we saw that we were unable to reclaim 115 and the rejections short-term maze, I let the team know hey, we're on alert here towards now the 103, 100 area. And that does start to set up for more short-term bearishness. So we definitely let our team know when we're flipping bearish, at least short-term, and what those bigger drops are going to look like. We're not here to just pretend that they're not happening or that they're not could happen. There's lots of clues that it was happening. So we're, absolutely on top of that. One of the things though I was looking at is I saw a lot of these wicks that were hanging below here, which is where current market price is. And I think that was a good, the top of the zone, 92K is what I marked there. But I've also marked this zone down here. And I think that that's the more likely area of where we're going to probably end up there. And, you can tighten this up here. The wicks, no wicks. We're talking about the 87, 88K range in here. So we could find a bounce in here at some point, but this does show that there is this imbalance that got created on the breakout there. I've pretty much gone as deeply as I can through this, the previous breakouts in here. I didn't see any super bad glaring imbalances. We took care of this topping over here, based on that bounce. I looked back in here, there's, some okay back testing that occurred before we, actually saw a little bit more of that flag occur in there. You saw some back testing in here. So short term, there really isn't a whole lot down at a lot of these levels that got left behind imbalance wise, minus the 87K region. For big picture below, this topping structure in here, if Bitcoin started to come below 66, that means that we're probably heading back down for the 30s. And I'm not suggesting that's where we're getting to right now. Of course, that 75K area will be a big area of interest. So short term though, very, very short term, we are overdue for a bounce at this point. We've got probably another $2,000-$3,000 to the downside here, but I am expecting some short term bounce, even if that means that we're just going to come retest the low 100s, the high 90s, and confirm and prove that that's a new ceiling of resistance, right? I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here. And just start to look at every tiny imbalance and assume that that's the next immediate step. So we are overdue for a bounce here in the next several thousand. If we bring RSI into this, we'll take a look to see if we're anywhere close to oversold territory. We are in oversold territory here on the daily, so that's another momentum indicator. I try to save that for last, just as a confluence point. So again, that's my big picture with Bitcoin here. The reason that alts have not gotten absolutely obliterated is because when we saw that first big break in Bitcoin, we came back below 100K. That was a 1.5, 1.6% drop in dominance. That is the saving grace of a drop in dominance while Bitcoin's correcting. Alts will still come down. No ifs, ands, or buts. But the velocity in which they come down is very much tied to dominance performance. And that's why when we saw that huge liquidation flushes, and then we even saw the huge spikes the other day, when you have that paired with a Bitcoin having a bad day, alts are going to take the brunt of that. So we've seen alts maintain some decent levels in here. ETH is actually in a super healthy spot. It has a little bit more downside here as well. I still see, a few $100 more here of downside action where we'd be fully rebalanced on there. We cover the alts, the rest of the alts on our show, regularly Monday through Friday. We're setting you guys up with these levels. Of course, we always start with the big ones, the stock market, Bitcoin, all this good stuff. We get into the alts. We let you guys know what those next levels look like so you guys can set those limit orders. We let you guys know if it's a DCA environment or if it's a market order environment. We try to make it very easy for you guys, and a lot of these alts are no stuff I know that you guys pay attention to and like, XRP, HBAR, Algorand. We cover a lot of stuff that I know that you guys are interested. So I'd encourage you guys to come check out today's show. If not, check out tomorrow's show. You guys get 30 days free with code YouTube and see this kind of analytic work on a more regular and granular basis, as well as the ability to get in the Discord and then follow up and be like, hey, what did you mean by that? It's all part of the membership. We want to make sure that you guys have a really good educational experience.
Team, thanks for joining us today. If you got something valuable here, make sure you leave a like. I always get nervous bringing up Bitcoin on the show because I know it's not the most popular thing for our community, but I do think there's some valuable utility here that you can implement within your own life. Crypto has a lot to offer as an investment, but also an alternative to, how you're currently, managing your life with your bank account and with your USD. And so I think that is a valid form. And if you agree, let us know in the comments. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section down below. Matt will be sure to answer them on his show this Wednesday. I saw some of the questions from last week, and you guys are going to antagonize Maddie this Wednesday. And so I was already like, oh, that one's coming up. I already know that one's going to be a good one.
Oh, God.
And so team, definitely show up for that. And Matt will also do a TikTok live on this Thursday. And so be on the lookouts for that. If you want alerts, you can be in our Discord. We send alerts there, or on our Instagram or any other social media platform like X or YouTube. You'll get alerts also there in the community tab on YouTube, or we will just tweet it on X. So be in the know. A lot is going to happen this week. So if you're new here, make sure you subscribe, because we're constantly bringing the crypto topic. This show is maybe a little bit departure, maybe a little bit self-indulgent on the Bitcoin and what maybe we're doing or what I'm doing. Maybe I'm going to take blame for this. I was a little indulgent, I know. But if you want that consistent value, if you go through our playlist on After Hours, it's been XRP, Zcash, XRP, HBAR. Like that has what we've been covering as of recently. And I think it's been pretty valuable to a lot of people out there. So team, that's all we have for today. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.